Kia ora koutou katoa and welcome to UFC on Sky. Ko Ravinder Hunia aho. As you can see, today we are at City Kickboxing Gym in Auckland, New Zealand, joined by head coach Eugene Bareman. Kia ora, Eugene.
Kia ora, good to be here.
Look, it's nice to be able to catch up with you about things that have happened and events yet to come, which is all very exciting. But first, I just wanted to start with your thoughts on UFC 276. So many fighters on the card, but I do want to start with Brad Riddell. We haven't really, seen or heard from him since, that less than desirable result against Jalen Turner. But how is he?
Brad's obviously, professional sport at this level, it's a winner takes all kind of thing. So Brad's doing well now, now that there's quite a few days have subsided since that event. But he was in a dark place, but the team and his mates and the boys and his family have kind of brought him back to thinking a little bit more positively and looking forward to the future. So, sometimes you just get caught early in the sport, and that's what happened to Brad. It's a bit frustrating, because what's frustrating about getting caught early is you never get to show anything, and you've been working on so much and you've been training so hard, and but credit to his opponent, that was his job and he executed it. So we were on the receiving end, and sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail, and that's just how it is.
Well, what kind of talks, so you talk about, rallying around him, what kind of talks do you have? Do you get into it deep, or is it more an internal thing for him to kind of get over, or how do you approach that?
Look, when a fighter loses, I personally don't talk about their loss at all until they're willing to talk to me. And to be fair, funnily enough, Brad was willing to talk to me almost immediately. And this was a very private conversation, obviously, but I just needed to reassure him that he is in that top echelon of guys, that top 15 in the world, of the toughest division in the UFC for a reason. And things haven't gone his way of late, but I just needed to reassure him that he is 100% one of the best fighters in the world at this particular time, and just to stay the course, just to trust the process and stay the course.
Alexander Volkanovski, co-main event at UFC 276. What an absolute banger. It was everything everyone thought it would be. How was he after the fight? He was absolutely on form, wasn't he? Yeah,
that was, that performance kind of left me gobsmacked. After every round, I kind of turned towards Joe and the rest of the corner and is there anything more we can do to make this more convincing? It was kind of it was unsaid, but they knew what I was trying to say. I just put my hands up and go, man, this is just unbelievable the way that this is going. And Joe had a masterful game plan, and I always say, a game plan is absolutely useless if you don't have someone that can execute it and stay disciplined and work on it and practice it. And that's exactly what you have in Alex. You have a guy that can follow a game plan and execute it, and if we need to change it, he can change it. He can do it all. And that's why I labelled him after that fight, in my opinion, for what it's worth, the pound for pound number one fighter in the world.
And that's not even an exaggeration. His tear in the UFC has been phenomenal, and fighting, some of the best guys that the UFC has to offer. When you talk about being a little stunned about, what do we tell him next? Was that due to him just executing the plan to precision? Did everything go the way you and Joe thought it would?
And better. And sometimes you have nights like that. Sometimes, we had, obviously, as you do, we had plan A, B, and C. But then sometimes you just don't expect plan A to just be going so well. You expect to have to adjust something or change something and stuff, but Max didn't seem to be able to clue up to some of the things that Alex was doing, and at each round where we expected him to kind of make a little bit of some inroads into kind of stifling what Alex was doing, he never really did. And so we were able to just leave things flowing as they were, and that's what was amazing. And sometimes you have nights like that. The plan that you set in place, the execution is just perfect. The opponent is not able to kind of get the read and get the adjustment that he needs to stifle some of it, and it just flows like that. And that was just one of those nights. So Alex was just on. Max didn't really adjust the way that we thought he would, and then you get a result like that.
Yeah. How important is it for you and Joe to be in sync? I know we saw like the embedded videos, Uncle Joe. So there's obviously a real in-tune relationship there, you know, away from fighting as well. How important is it for you two to be in tune to ensure that, you know, you get a result like that?
Oh, the synergy in the corner and the synergy in the corner and between the fighter is like, that's the number one thing. You have to be able to like read each other's thoughts in the corner, and the fighter has to be able to read the cornerman's thoughts. So you can kind of align, you have 1 minute to align your thoughts, and you can't, that's something that gets developed over years and years and years and years. Like that can't be done again with a stranger in a minute. You can't hope to understand each other in a minute. So I mean, we have the synergy that we always try to work on in the corner, and we have it between the corner and the fighter. And look, me and Joe and this team and Joe's team, we respect each other tremendously. Joe's a young man, but he's quite a bit older than me. So the way I look at Joe is like he's like a senior to me. And so I might be senior to a lot of guys in the gym, but then he's my senior. And so I treat him, you know, aptly, like I would any one of my elders, with respect. And I look up to Joe. I learn a lot from Joe and Alex, and we had that night we were flowing. Our synergy was perfect. So yeah.
How would you describe that relationship between you and Joe over, you know, this isn't a recent thing that you've been there with Alex, and Alex has been here, and the relationship with Freestyle. So how far has this relationship come? Because it's been a little while now, and people always talk about, oh, we go to Eugene to learn, but obviously you're still learning new things too from the likes of Joe.
Yeah, look, Joe was been in the sport a lot longer than me, and like a coach can't stop learning, and at the same time a student can't stop learning. And Joe's one of those people that I learn off, and we've just got, as we've been through the struggles and the camps and the successes and also the defeats, we've just become closer and closer and closer, as you do in this environment. And Joe's is bigger part, might be based in Australia. Joe and Alex might be based in Australia, but they're as closer and as big a part of this team as anybody else. So that's just a development and a closeness that you get from going through adversity with each other over and over and over again over the last 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, we're peas in a pod. We're very close.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. And now, since that result, there's so many doors that have opened for Alex in terms of an opponent next. What are your thoughts on him saying that he wants to go at lightweight next and Charles Oliveira?
He could. He could. I don't know. I think maybe some people expect me to be a little bit nervous about that because I've done it with another fighter who wasn't quite successful. But like the two have nothing to do with each other. Like, in fact, like those two fighters, they're completely different fighters, right? So, I'll back Alex and Joe with whatever direction they take, but what I do think Alex has earned through such dominance up until this stage is the right to pick and choose what he does, and whether he goes up and fights for the title or whether he stays in and clears the division out a little longer. He's basically reached the same point that Israel did after he fought Paulo Costa, where there's no, like, who can challenge him? The performance is so dominating. Like, what other choices are there out there for him? Well, there's a few choices, but he's earned the right to make them himself instead of being forced in a particular direction.
Do you defend, or do you try to be a champion to make history in another way? There's all sorts of things.
Yeah, I like the team, and him and Joe got some tough choices to make in the coming few months.
It's a nice headache to have, though.
It is very nice. It is very nice headache to have, and nothing bad can come of it.
Yeah. Most definitely. Look, you brought up Paulo Costa, so let's move along to the middleweight division. Israel Adesanya getting that decision win over Jarrod Cannonier, and we were talking about that there was, a possibility that Izzy could have returned to the octagon, but, how is he? And your breakdown of that fight and how that game plan was executed.
Yeah, I mean, I give, like, from 1 to 10, 10 being the best, I'm going to give Israel a 7 for that. I thought our plan was like 70% executed. We did work on like creating a bit more offense. And we worked a lot of things on creating a lot more offense because we felt that from the previous fight with Robert, that was one area we needed to work on. And we talked about the synergy that we had between the corner, between Alex's corner and Alex. We definitely didn't have that with Israel's fight. We were seeing one thing and he was seeing something else, and then when we were seeing what he was seeing, then he was like, we just weren't together on our thoughts. We weren't able to align our thoughts together. And I did mention that in other interviews, like in terms of like the way that we interacted and the things that we saw, we were never really able to come together like we normally were. Regardless, I thought Israel did a fantastic job at like completely dominating that fight and doing what he needed to do to win. The fight went as I expected it to go. Obviously, I just mentioned that I thought Israel would be able to create a lot more opportunities for offense for himself, but he wasn't able to do that. But he was still able to win convincingly. Perhaps one of the things that surprised me was I expected Jarrod to, at the point he thought that the fight was slipping away from him, to take a little bit way more risk than he did. And that's perhaps one thing that I didn't expect. I thought he would really come on strong.
Do you have a little hui about that? I mean, I don't know if you were directly after a fight, you'd let things calm down, but do you talk about that and say, hey, you know, when we were feeling a little frustrated in the corner, we were seeing things that you weren't, and you were perhaps seeing things that we weren't, but the communication wasn't quite there. How do you kind of try and rectify that, or is it just a fight-by-fight thing?
Just about every day since that fight's happened. I don't know how many days have passed now. Me and Israel have communicated in some form via voice or text about that fight and adjustments that have to be made and what he saw and what he's seen as he's watched the fight and analysed it. I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but he sent me many messages already, and we've talked about exactly what you said. Because that's what we do. I mean, but that's what we typically do every fight. Like, we like to get on. Like most of the time, a lot of the times, what happens is we will go back to the hotel or the house where we're staying, and Israel bring up the fight almost immediately, and we'll start picking away at it. We just like to get onto that things because that's just what we enjoy, and we know that for Israel the next evolution of Israel and to him to make the next step and to him to improve that little bit more, that we need to like get onto those things as soon as we can. Yeah. So yeah, we discuss it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, absolutely.
Good. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
and it's the only way you're going to progress and do better and have that be more succinct, I suppose. Which is strange, because to think of how many fights you two have been in together with, but you still need to have these conversations. You know? Not in a bad way.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Like not every night goes your way. Not every night goes your way, and all the different aspects that have to come together. Some come together, some don't. And on that particular night, I felt that the synergy between us and him was not the best that it's ever been. It doesn't often go wrong, and it doesn't often go wrong because we've been together for so long. That's something that you can really bank on, that we know each other really well. But it wasn't the best night for us in terms of that, but we rectify it, and we've already talked about it and discussed it, and we make sure it doesn't happen again. Yeah.
Was there anything in that fight that Jarrod brought that perhaps you hadn't not prepared for, but thought, oh, he's doing that, we didn't think he would do that?
No. Nah. Other than I really thought he was the guy that when the fight was starting to slip away from him, I just really thought that he would be a guy that would push, and not be so worried about the vulnerabilities that come with pushing the envelope. And again, no criticism in Jarrod, because that's really easy to say. Like I've obviously many years ago sparred Israel, and it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to do it when you've got that such, those things coming at you, those offensive weapons coming at you. So that's the only thing that took me a little bit unexpected.
So Eugene, after all of that, you've said a 7 out of 10, 70%. It didn't go the way that you had, a dream win, but a win was a win, but it still feels like in the eyes of a lot of people it wasn't enough. Yeah, and then like my kind of like critique towards that is like, who are these people? Okay, like who are these people, and what is their level of expertise? And
most of the time they're just a fan, and their understanding of the sport is very rudimentary, and they just want to see what in their mind is a good, entertaining fight. And you know, and sometimes we can give them what they want, and sometimes we can't. And it's not our job to give them what they want. It's our job to win the fight in as most convincing fashion as we can. Sometimes that's going to be exciting. Sometimes it's not going to be exciting. And my other kind of like critique to that is that there's two people make a fight. Okay, two people make a fight. So I see, you know, like I've heard there's a lot of criticism on Israel's performance, but at the end of the day, there was spots in that fight where Israel was the one pushing for action, and Jarrod was the one that was not willing to engage. But he doesn't get any criticism. I just think Israel's, because of the way he is, he's a bit of a polarizing character, that he's open for criticism. What Israel should do, and as far as I know what he's doing, is just ignore all that and get on with your happy life.
That's right. Take the win, be happy with the win, digest it, on to the next one.
Absolutely.
So, talking about that, on to the next one. Where to from here for Izzy?
He's got. There was the potential of us fighting like quite a quick turnaround. Yeah, like it's been anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks, and we were willing to do that. But then we've found out that he's a little bit banged up in the legs, and he's got some injuries that are just not going to be able to heal in time for that. So realistically, we're looking at like something around November and December, given that he comes back from those injuries like fine. So yeah, there's the end of the year is always, you know, there's International Fight Week, and then there's the end of the year events that are the big ones. So he'll be one of those big events like November, December. So plenty of time.
Yeah, great. And hopefully you can get a couple of the other boys on there too.
That's a mainstay. We have to have that.
Yeah. Okay, so coming away from UFC 276, in the background, on the boil, is Kai Kara-France getting ready for an interim title fight at UFC 277. How have his preparations been going?
Very good. Very good. You almost got me. Yeah. No, Kai's preparations have been very good. Not the greatest timing, like us having Carlos and the boys on an event, so we had to disappear. But we left them in good hands, and I came back almost immediately and got straight into it. And everything that I needed him to kind of like understand and progress and have a good ability to do, he's doing really, really well, and we just built on that, and we've still got a good amount of time. So I'm very happy with his preparations, and you're going to see something special, I think.
I think you're right, and the last few times that I've spoken to him before his fights, it feels different. It feels he's kind of gone to that other place where he's turned from the fighter mentality to more of a champion mentality. Yeah. Do you think that, and what do you think it was that helped him make that shift?
Yeah, he's definitely done that. I'm not going to say he was he always had some confidence, but I felt like early in his UFC career, at least, it wasn't that Israel type confidence, where it's just coming into a fight, you're just the supreme being, and there's 0% chance that you're going to lose. I felt like he didn't have that sort of confidence, and that is the sort of confidence that you need going into a fight. And it's not that's not to say it's not an overconfidence. It's just an absolute confidence in your ability and your preparation. And I feel like that's what he's got now. And I feel like I can't pinpoint it to why that's changed, but I do. I feel like that's been a progression, and a lot of it comes from his teammates, from guys like Israel and Brad and Dan and Carlos. I feel like they've all kind of made this change together, where they realise, look, by the time we're walking into that ring, we have to have absolute belief in what we've done, our team and ourselves. And I feel like that's what Kai takes into the fights, whereas I think that kind of waned a little bit early in his career.
Yeah. I remember before you were celebrating UFC contracts. Now it's turning into multiple championship belts. That is crazy when you think about, you know, how this is all coming kind of full circle. These boys are just leveling up. Like every year it's getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I don't often stop to smell the roses, but that's amazing. Like, you know, when someone like you brings that up, and then it's like, man, you know, like we're challenging for another championship bout in a relatively short amount of time since we arrived on the scene. We've cemented our place, like in the sport. Like we have our little bit of real estate. People know that people in our part, you know, around the world, they know that New Zealand produces high-level fighters, and this gym produces some very good talent. Like, yeah, everything's changed from when I started, and I'm just blessed to have a very small part to do with that.
Yeah, no, good on you. Look, on Kai's opponent, of course, it's Brandon Moreno, who had an opportunity to have another fight with Deiveson Figueiredo before this fight was announced because Davidson was out. What do you make of Moreno as an opponent, and how do you prepare again for someone like him?
Yeah, no, it's the massive respect to his opponent, and he's changed camps for this fight for the first time, I believe. He's gone to a very good camp with a very good coach, James Krause, and I think that's what he needed. I think that's what he needed. A part of me wishes that he hadn't done that, but nevertheless he has. So we have to, like, you know, we have to take care of that. But he has a very good camp. He will come up with a very good strategy. But man, he's improved massively over his fights with Deiveson and Figueiredo. And if he hasn't, you know, I don't necessarily mean technically. I think technically he has made some improvements, but I actually think he's made more improvements from just going through those battles with such a worthy opponent. He is going to be a guy, you're going to have two guys that I feel are not going to mentally be able to break each other. So it's going to come down to skill. And that's something, when it comes down to that, like, I love it. I love it when it comes down to skill, because that's where I feel that my guys can separate themselves a little bit. When the guys from CKB from New Zealand have to, like, really, you know, dig down and bite on their mouthguard, I think I back them to do that. But when both guys are like that and they're not going to break each other's will, and it comes down to just how skillful you are on the night, I think that gives Kai a little bit of an advantage.
You've been here before when you were, you know, preparing Israel for his interim fight before he was able to get in and get the bout from Robert Whittaker. Is it that kind of same energy, or is it different this time with Kai?
No, it's the same. And how you treat it as like that, you get rid of that word interim. You never even mention it. As far as the team's concerned, Kai's concerned, everybody's concerned, that's for the championship of the world. And in the back of our head, of course we know it's not the championship of the world, but what it does is it puts you one foot in the door to getting that. And so it's just as important, if not more important, as getting that opportunity. So we know that this gives us the opportunity to get the real bout, so we treat it like the real bout. And that's the kind of mentality and focus that we're using. But it's good to be able to go back on, you know, the experience that we had with Israel fighting for that interim bout, because it has been useful.
Okay, well, Eugene, I feel like I've been here all day talking to you about this, but thank you so much for your time and joining us on UFC on Sky.
Cool, awesome. Thank you, Rap. Good to be here.
The current UFC flyweight champion Deiveson Figueiredo was front row centre at UFC 276, and of course Sky Sport were there on the ground in Las Vegas. Here is what he had to say about his next potential opponent.
Ô Kai Kara-France, quero que você arrebente a cara do Brandon Moreno para que a gente possa se encontrar e resolver essa prosa que existe agora entre nós dois. Entendeu? Estou pronto para lutar com você, meu irmão, e vai ser um espetáculo da noite.
Kai, espero que venza. Kai, I hope you can beat Brandon Moreno because we have this rivalry, and I hope we can settle that down.
Ele é um cara forte, né? Tem um strike muito bom que combina com o meu, por isso que eu deixo bem aberto aqui que vai ser uma luta da noite, né? Vai ser um espetáculo muito grande para o público aí.
I think he's a really strong guy. He has a really good striking. His style match really good with mine, and I think it's going to be the fight of the night, and I think it's going to be a great fight for the fans.
Bom, a luta, infelizmente, eu não vou para Nova Zelândia, eu vou puxar a luta para o Brasil, para o meu país. Já faz muito tempo que eu luto fora de casa, então eu quero lutar em casa e vou levar essa luta para lá.
Unfortunately, this fight won't happen in New Zealand. I want this fight to happen in Brazil. I want to fight in my home. I haven't fought there in a while, but I'm glad that I can. I'm glad. I'll be glad if this fight against Kai happens.
I guess the champ wants a piece, and he's just going to have to wait. I've got a fight in front of me, and that's all I'm focused on. Brandon Moreno is who I'm going to battle with, and that's the fight game. If you don't make it to the war, then you can just sit back and enjoy the comfortable seat that you're sitting in, because just leave it to us to fight for the belt. And I thank Brandon Moreno for accepting the fight and allowing me to step in and fight for this world title. So I know eventually me and Figgy are going to meet, and when we do, it will be the right time and hopefully in the right place, hopefully this side of the world. And I don't really care who they put in front of me, as long as it's for a belt, as long as it's in front of people, and as long as I can represent Aotearoa, New Zealand, then I'm fired up, I'm motivated, and I'm focused. So I can't wait.
Yeah, and that's the one. That's the mentality that you need. Looking at that fight in front of you, talking about that, Brandon Moreno, how have your preparations been for this fight so far? And does it feel a little different this time, preparing for a title fight?
It's been a long camp, long road that I haven't made any excuses and I haven't taken any shortcuts. And I feel like I'm already the champion. The way I'm training right now, there's nothing that deters me. There's nothing that throws me off. And at the highest level, it's just about who adapts and who can perform under all this pressure. So yeah, I've already been on fight week for the last month. That I've been visualizing every time I step in the gym, every time I'm sparring, every time I'm doing recovery. I'm just locked in, tunnel vision. Every time I get a rest where I have to slow my breathing down, it takes me back to the cage and it takes me back into when I'm in between rounds and I'm tired or breathing heavy, and I'm just telling myself relax, and then it's just mentally where you need to be when you're fighting the best in the world. So I could fight this weekend. I'm ready to go. Got one more week to kind of fine tune, and then we head over. So yeah, I'm excited for this fight. 5 rounds, my first 5-round title fight. But man, I'm ready to go wherever this fight goes. If it's a 5-round dog fight, if it's a 1-round barn burner where I find the targets and find the shot, I'm ready to go. So I welcome it. I welcome him to try take me to the ground, try wrestle me, try grapple me, try stand with me, and we'll find an answer and we'll solve the puzzle. So I'm 100% confident in my team and my preparation and in myself.
No, you use that word confidence, and that's a word that your coach Eugene Bareman also said that of anything that you have improved on exponentially, especially since your last fight with Brandon Moreno, is that confidence. How important do you think that's going to come into play when you say coming into your first 5-rounder, not just a main event, but a title fight?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I've always been the hardest worker in the group, even though, at this highest level, you got to be doing everything. I feel like I'm going above and beyond, not just in the work in the gym, but recovery wise, mental wise, and just overall, being a full martial artist, like really just taking this to the next level. And I see what Izzy, I see what Alex have to do. And it's not about the training, it's about the intent, it's about the intensity and training, and then it's also about that top percent, which is your mindset. And even though people might be counting you out, in your head you're always in it, and you're always locked in, and you just know you're going to find a way. And that's where I'm at, where whatever's happening, I know that we'll come out on top. And that's why I'm excited, because I haven't felt like this, and there's a barrier that I've had to overcome, and now that I'm on the other side of it, and I'm just like, I'm about to be a world champion. It's definitely freeing, and now that I'm not limited by my own self-belief, that's when I feel like I'm going to be at my best. So definitely feel a different shift for this camp. Just don't get tired anymore. Mentally, whenever I'm under pressure, I just thrive in it. I welcome it. I don't shy away from it. And that's what you have to do in these big fights. Whenever you're going into hostile territory, everyone's going to be against me. Everyone's going to be expecting Brandon to beat me again. But man, there's something special that we've been able to do in this gym, and I'm ready for the challenge, and I'm ready to take it to Brandon. So yeah, it's going to be a great fight. I could have gone to Vegas for UFC 276. I could have been there with the rest of the team. I could have been there where the UFC would have put me up and I guess looked after me. But I got my own bout to win, and I want to put my best foot forward. I don't want to lose time, traveling, recovery, losing sleep, not getting the same amount of quality of training. So I stayed in the gym. I didn't take a day off. I know Brandon was there working and being a part of fight week, but it's not our time yet. And I know that's about to happen in the next few weeks. So I just stayed in the gym, stayed doing the same routine, and I'm not having to play catch up. My weight's good. I'm mentally where I need to be, physically where I need to be. And now that we're a week up from leaving, I'm just firing on all cylinders. Everything's starting to peak at the right time. And the confidence is just oozing. And that's what you want leading into a world title.
I know that you and I have this conversation about, Wairua, Māoritanga, when you go to war, you come from a long line of warriors. But yeah. I have a question from a fan who wants to ask you about your pukana and how you've perfected it on the world stage, and how often do you practice it?
Man, I don't practice it at all. It's just a feeling. It's just something that it embodies the moment. I don't really put too much thought into it. I just feel it, and if it's the right time, it's the right place, then I just let my tupuna take over, kind of. And like I said, I think in our previous interview, my uncle, that I'm his namesake, he passed away when I found out about this title fight, and I made a promise at his tangi. I said, when I win the belt, I'll bring it back and I'll celebrate with my uncle and with my family down in Napier and Hawke's Bay. So I'm going to keep that promise, and I know all my tupuna, all my ancestors, all my whānau will be behind me. When I make that walkout, when you hear poie, you'll know it's a party. And then when I'm in the octagon, I'm all business. So I can't wait to get in there and represent. And you'll see that fire in my eyes that night. It's, the nice guy that you see now, the nice family man goes out the window, and I got to respect that. And that's the mentality you got to have. This guy wants to take everything away from me. He wants to take food off my table, wants to take everything away from my family. And me and Brandon have nothing personal, but it's all business when we get in there. So, I welcome it, and I can't wait.
Whānau UFC 277 goes down Sunday, July 31st. So check your guides for booking details on there. Of course, our very own flyweight Kai Kara-France is up against Brandon Moreno for the UFC flyweight interim title. Also on that card as the main event, the rematch, Juliana Pena versus Amanda Nunes at the conclusion of The Ultimate Fighter. Thank you for joining us. Mā te wā.